Welcome to Spirit of Madikwe, Africa's Majesty. We're going to take you on a journey to a real safari. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Spirit of Madikwe, Africa's Majesty. We received some interesting questions from you guys about buffaloes, antelopes, and actually this episode was designated to talk about exactly those things. Buffaloes are a very interesting species, and together with this goes antelopes. And what is interesting about this whole thing is really how do the national parks in South Africa and Southern Africa manage those animals, and how does this all play together? And again, we have Arthur with us today, and he is already very excited to talk to us about these things. So Arthur, your stage.
Okay, so that all comes down to, are we talking about how they are managed in fenced reserves or how they are managed in general?
As far as I understood, it is more the question in fenced environments too.
Okay, so basically there is no unfenced reserves in South Africa. Let's just get that out of the way. So any animal management is within a fenced area. A big thing with antelope, and now we're getting into territory where it's one of those discussions. Like I say, we need to have these discussions so that people can understand what's going on, but it's not always everybody's cup of tea. So generally, the situation was, do you remember when I explained to you why the Kruger Park was established?
Yes.
So the Kruger Park was established so that animals would have a place to breed, so that outside of the reserve, they wouldn't be hunted to extinction.
Exactly.
And that's basically how the Kruger Park has functioned ever since. So it's very rare that you have an overpopulation of ungulates. So when I say ungulates, I mean any hooved animal. So I'm talking about everything from a zebra to an impala. It's very rare that you have an overpopulation in a well-functioning ecosystem because the predators tend to do a good job of keeping them under control. But in the Kruger Park, if we do get to a point where we have too many antelope, and in a lot of game reserves, it's seen as another form of income for the park. So we won't allow anybody in a national park in South Africa to come and hunt an impala. But the impala can be caught and sold to a private farm. And on that private farm, it will most likely end up being hunted. Yeah, the other option would be a culling program, which is also not acceptable. You know, taking it from a public point of view, and I don't know, it's very difficult because from the public point of view, if we talk about hunting, it's frowned upon, and when we talk about culling, it's also frowned upon.
And we're always sitting between the rock and the hard place in the end. Huh?
Exactly, and at the end of the day, we know if we let one species overpopulate, we're going to end up with a cascading effect.
Yeah,
that's going to affect the whole ecosystem. But here's the reality, guys. South Africa's relationship with hunting goes back a very long way, basically from the time Europeans arrived here. And these animals are still here, you know. So it's not. I really do feel like a lot of these videos and a lot of these activists, the rhetoric they give is that if we don't stop trophy hunting today, the animals are going to be gone tomorrow. It couldn't be further from the truth. I believe it's actually the opposite. So I'll give you a good example of how that works. Pre-1960, we didn't really have hunting farms or hunting reserves in South Africa. Most of your international trophy hunts took place in places like Botswana, and I think that had a lot to do with the political situation in South Africa as well. People didn't want to come to South Africa. They would rather go to Zambia or Zimbabwe or wherever it may be. But once the industry started kicking off, what we now have is we've got private land that is being conserved as if it was a national park. So at the end of the day, we've got more conservation happening because of the hunting industry. Did I lose you?
No, it's fine. I'm just thinking. So is it? I'm just trying to be a little bit of the advocate here. I do hear what you're saying, but isn't it like a little bit of sugarcoating this whole activity? Like, okay.
Well, the thing is, no matter which way you look at it, you could turn it into you could say it's sugarcoating the thing, because the reality is a lot of us don't like hunting. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
But then again, a lot of people don't have a problem with it. My position, on the other hand, is, and I've said this to you quite a few times, is
yes,
I don't like the idea of trophy hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see the value to it.
I mean, just maybe let me rephrase what you said before. So if we are in a place like Kruger and we have, say, this impala, and we realize, okay, those impalas are going to overpopulate, meaning they would basically eat down all the bushes and everything. So they would basically start destroying the ecosystem that, as you said, would have a ripple effect throughout the whole park.
Exactly.
So this means, in any case, this will have an effect that kills animals. So there is two alternatives to this. Is the one alternative would be just shoot it on spot, more or less, culling, as you say, or you say, okay, well, let's put in a little bit of effort, catch this animal, put it onto a farm, basically sell it, so at least get some money out of it for the park, because you said before the park actually is, well, dependent on additional funding, donations, whatnot. And
exactly.
so this would be kind of an additional income. I mean, again, people could argue, okay, you are selling those antelopes because you want to get money. But yeah, well, if you want to find something bad about this, you will always do. But the way that I understand it, the way I see it, it's not the best thing. It's not ideal for the individual antelope, because this antelope would say, why me? Why not the other one? But on the other hand side, yeah, it's a bit of a phrase, but it's a greater good thing, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's you got to look at the greater good. So here's a good way to explain to you why it's important to do things. Now, this is actually an example of what happened way back at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, when the Kruger Park was established. Remember, the whole idea was to have a place where your game for hunting could breed.
Mm-hmm.
So James Stevenson Hamilton, the first game warden in the Kruger Park, he implemented a shoot on-site predator policy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that for a long time that the Kruger Park was a conserved area, him and all the rangers that worked with him, if they saw a lion, they shot it. If they saw a leopard, they shot it.
Okay, because they wanted to conserve the game.
Because they wanted to protect the antelope. Okay. But now time goes on. And now we learn something, that if Stevenson Hamilton didn't do that, the Kruger Park as we know it today probably would not exist.
Okay, how's that?
Because it turns out that if you go count how many predators they shot, and if you go extrapolate from their sightings how many predators were in that area,
mm-hmm.
the predator concentration was huge.
Oh, okay.
So if you just went and put fences around it, the predators would have killed everything.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not saying he knew what he was doing, but what I'm saying is if he didn't take the actions that he did take, we would have had a problem, a big problem. So you got to take into account that the operative word here is fences, because if you go look at a place like the Masai Mara and the Serengeti, where there is no fenced areas, or it's basically much bigger and open, those lions and those crocodiles and whatnot, they really only have a good time once a year. You know, the rest of the year they don't have it as easy, because you've got the migrations coming through. Now, when the Kruger Park was unfenced, you would have animals coming in from outside the area and then moving out and coming from north to south and south to north. And you had all these migratory routes. So the predators there had a constant supply. The animals would leave, go breed somewhere else, and then come back on a migration, and then the predators would have a feast. But the moment you put a fence around it, if you had the same density of predators, the amount of antelope or the amount of prey species would not be sufficient. So you would end up with a rather bad, a sudden decline in species. Yeah. So we have to, unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, we have to keep animal numbers under control.
Maybe just to put a little bit of a perspective to this. I mean, we have to do this because we started fiddling around with it like several hundreds of years ago. We have places like South Africa where you have densely populated places. You have Johannesburg, Pretoria, this area. There's a lot of people living there. So you actually cannot have the wildlife just roaming freely. But on the other hand side, you obviously still want to conserve the wildlife. So you actually have to put like fences around it in order to be able to kind of separate man from the animal, because it just wouldn't work, not in the amount of men that are living in South Africa. It might be a little bit different when you go to Botswana. I mean, it's not that densely populated, but still, I think they put fences around some areas.
No, but now you go look at Botswana, at Zimbabwe, at all of those places. In those places, they've got massive human-animal conflict.
Yes.
So there's always a downside to the scenario. And here's the problem is, if we decide tomorrow we take down the fences of the Kruger National Park and let the animals roam free, what about the people living around the park?
Yeah.
It's a very, shall I say, it's a catch-22 situation. You're never going to keep everybody happy.
It's not, never.
But now I'm also going to say the way that the whole hunting industry is portrayed. Yes, I'll be the first one to say there's massive problems in the hunting industry. And what I mean by that is, I was watching a documentary on YouTube the other day, a CNN documentary about trophy hunting. And this guy came to Africa to hunt a leopard. Now, this was not in South Africa, it was in Zimbabwe. But now he goes and they go and they set up bait stations to bait the leopard to get it to a specific area so that this guy can hunt it. I believe that's wrong.
That's not hunting, yeah.
That's not hunting, that's murder.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm all for it if somebody goes out on foot, tracks the animal, takes his shot without the dead rest stick, and he makes a clean hunt. No problems. So yes, I'm not entirely supportive of the hunting industry, because the moment you get to a point where people are shooting from hides and shooting from vehicles, then it's no longer hunting. Then to me it becomes target practice. It becomes,
yeah, exactly.
It's not ethical. Nobody's saying the hunting industry is innocent, but what I would say is we need to reform the hunting industry to get it to be an ethical industry. And if the hunts are done on an ethical way, then there's definitely place for conservation and for hunting in Africa. Because there's just too many things that people don't take into account when they say we need to stop hunting outright.
Mm.
One of the things is, if you look at a place like Zimbabwe, some of those rural villages, how the system works is the village will be given a permit by the authorities that for the purpose of feeding the village, they might be able to kill 3 elephants. Now, what happens is you will get a hunting outfitter who will go there. He will negotiate with a price with the village. He will bring in an outside trophy hunter. The hunter will take his elephant. The village will take the meat. And the village now also gets an X amount that they were paid by the hunter. So now they can improve their infrastructure by building schools and things like that. On the other hand, now people say, yes, but that's not a good excuse to create stuff. So if that hunter did not hunt the animals and he simply went and made a donation and say, listen here, guys, I want to build a school for your village, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, the village is still going to kill the 3 animals for food.
They still have to do that, yeah.
So whether the hunter pays for the trophy or not, the animal's going to die.
Yes.
And I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that whether somebody takes a trophy or not, the animal is going to die.
I think that's also what I meant before. I mean, no matter what you do, if you do not keep that population in check, maybe not that specific antelope is dying, but there's other antelopes and animals that are dying.
Exactly.
It's the cruel truth of humans that actually started interacting and fiddling with nature. I mean, I think I told you in Europe we are. I mean, this is always what gets me mad the most, is that us Europeans are basically lecturing you about how to do that. But then on the other hand side, we are the first to shoot anything that moves out of the forest. Yeah, like we're getting a few of those wolves back, and the first thing that everybody cries out is, "Oh, shoot it! It might be dangerous."
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I do have a theory about this. You know, we've established a long time ago that everybody comes from Africa.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to Africa, people have got a bit of a romanticized love for the continent.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of skews the vision a bit. Where
probably this romantic thing, yeah, it's a bit gone.
Yeah, it's generally it's not. For me, it's not a problem. I love the fact that everybody loves my home. But
yeah.
it does come down to the fact that, you know, sometimes you have to let the people who know the environment deal with it. And you know, my biggest concern is that if we go ahead and stop trophy hunting or hunting in its entirety in Africa, we're actually going to lose more animals than we're going to save. And like I said earlier, most of the hunting in Southern Africa takes place on private land. So now you've got a person that owns a piece of ground, and he doesn't come and put cattle on there. He doesn't farm corn. He lets the wildlife live there because he's got a way to make a living from the wildlife.
Oh,
so
that's a good thing.
My problem is, what's going to happen if you tell that person that you can no longer earn an income from the wildlife? Is he's going to say, right, all the kudus and impalas go, I'm buying 500 cattle and I'm going to start farming cattle because I've got bills to pay.
Yes.
And that's going to be super destructive. So a lot of the game species that we have is gonna go bye-bye, because the reality is, and I might take a lot of bad comments for this, but the truth is, on planet Earth, if it's not valuable, we don't save it.
That's the way we do it, yeah.
Yeah, if there's no way to make money from an animal, there's no point to save it. You know, we've got this nice balance going where our wildlife is actually increasing to the point where we're discussing culling operations and having to reduce the numbers, and that's with the trophy hunting industry running parallel.
Yeah.
So I think in Southern Africa we're actually doing a good job.
I think now that the problem really is the other thing that comes like together with this is, as you said, in Southern Africa you're doing a good job. Unfortunately, there's other countries that for one reason or another are not doing such a good job. I mean, I'm not judging. It's just obvious that it's not like this.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I from my point as a South African, yeah, I'm very vocal about it. That there's a lot of countries in Africa that can do a whole lot more to protect their wildlife heritage.
But if people talk about Africa, it's all Africa. So it's basically from at least Sub-Sahara to Cape Gillis, and that's Africa. But yeah, there's much more than it's much more diversified than you would think. Yeah.
Exactly. It's, you know, what people must realize is just because we've got elephants near extinction in North and West Africa doesn't mean that elephants in South Africa are that close to extinction as well.
I mean, if again coming back to that story that Botswana has basically 20,000 elephants to spare, so they have like 20,000 elephants. They don't know what to do with them because they're just too much, and they want to send them to Germany. That should tell you a lot. Yeah?
Exactly. I mean, it's and let's be honest. I think the number of 20,000 elephants is very conservative.
Yeah.
I think it might be much more than that. Because if you go to a place like Kasane and you do a river cruise
yes,
in the afternoons, I mean, that's thousands upon thousands of elephants at that river.
It's amazing, yes.
And for me, it was, you know, I used to err on the side of I was against hunting until with doing the overlanding, I experienced it firsthand, where the first time I got to Kasane, that riverbed was absolutely beautiful and green, and you know, it was this paradise. And then they stop all forms of hunting, so there's nothing to control the population. And a year later, the same riverbank looks like the Kalahari Desert.
Yeah,
because the elephants have just basically exploded. The elephant population exploded, and it ended up, you know, destroying the environment.
And I mean, just to give you guys also an impression, I think there's a couple of videos also on YouTube or somewhere else. You can see actually elephants taking down trees. And I'm not talking about baby trees. I'm talking about like 5 to 10 meter high trees that they basically just tear down to eat the leaves.
So that's something we have to explain as well. Is remember that elephants breaking trees is normal.
Yeah.
Okay, but now if you go and you look at aerial photos of a place like, let's use the Kruger as an example. And you go right through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and you could get an aerial photo of the entire park every week. What you would notice is while the elephant population was kept under control, you would have certain areas of the park would become wooded because the trees there would grow, while the elephants were in another section. And by the time they're done in that section, all the big trees are destroyed. And then they move again. So you had this constant ebb and flow where forested areas would become open plains and open plains would become forested areas. What's happening today is rather alarming because we've got too many elephants. So the areas that are open plains don't get a chance to become forested again, because now you've got elephants everywhere.
I think you've shown up that one area in Madikwe in the reserve that you actually had like enclosed, so the vegetation could kind of regrow.
Yeah, the quarry.
The quarry. And then basically the day you tore down the fence, or they kind of opened the fence, I think it took, what did you say, like 1 or 2 days, and this area was devastated.
From the time that they opened till the time that you saw it was probably about a week.
This is, wow.
And all of a
It was
sudden, those
gone.
trees were gone.
Yes.
You know, we have to realize that when we talk about conservation, we need to talk about the ecosystem in its entirety.
Yeah.
And that includes plants and trees.
Mm.
I'm sorry for the people that say that if you eat plants, you're not killing anything, but plants are a living being.
Yep.
So they are just as important as anything else in the ecosystem.
Well, I think actually last episode we basically discussed the algae, which were more or less the first piece of life. So basically grandpa or something. Huh?
Yeah, that's it. The first single-celled organisms were probably algae.
And that's a sort of plant.
Exactly.
And with this, we are going to conclude this episode about management of antelopes and buffaloes. And yeah, finally, in the next episodes, we will learn about those buffaloes a bit more. Thank you very much, and see you next time.